add value to your business, or do you want to just be this administrative person?
And often if you look at your talent team and the caliber of talent in your company, they correlate.
You could hire the best person for the job if they were in your candidate pool.
All these individual employees, one by one, together, their voices all come together to articulate the culture of the company.
Yes, you can go fast alone, but if you want to go far, you have to build a team.
Welcome back, listeners. We have another phenomenal episode of Hiring on All Cylinders coming up. For those of you tuning in to the Facebook live stream, make sure to check out our official podcast on iTunes or wherever you may listen into podcasts to capture great insights in the coming days and weeks. Also, if you hadn't noticed, we're shuffling things around quite a bit for these special HR Tech 2017 editions of Hiring on All Cylinders. That's why it's with great pleasure that I get to reintroduce our fantastic leader at Entelo, Jon Bischke. Jon, what number cup of coffee are you on?
You know, the sad thing is I've only had one today. I was going to grab one before this episode, so I'm going to try to do it without caffeine for the next 15 minutes.
Godspeed, sir. And so it goes on. I swear the number of companies that are sharing their solutions at HR Tech is absolutely incredible. And one of those is all about HR for humans. Isn't that right, Jon?
Yeah, absolutely. So Matt and I connected a while back, and I was really excited about what they're working on because I think it really hits home for us as a growing company that you think about all the heavy lifting behind the scenes around HR and payroll and benefits, and you know the last thing you want to do when you're scaling your company is be bogged down by any of that. And that's really what Namely is up to. So Matt, I'd just love to, if you want to give maybe a minute, most people in our audience probably know what Namely is, but if they don't, what's the elevator pitch?
Sure. So Namely is an HR, payroll, and benefits platform for mid-sized companies. It was really the idea for the company is that I had built two other companies and worked for larger companies with lots and lots of small to mid-sized companies under their umbrella. And the one thing I found in common with all those companies as an employee, as a manager, I didn't have access to the people data that I needed to run my business or run the part of my business. And so that's been the journey for the last 6 years now, is building out that platform and now starting to be able to help people with data and insights.
I love that, and I think it's definitely an idea whose time has come, right? If you think about where people are going and all the growth in startups and early to mid-sized companies, I mean, it's you guys have just really hit a sweet spot in the market. I wanted to ask about, you're on a panel tomorrow talking about how tech vendors are integrating with other solutions. I mean, a key dynamic here is you guys do a lot, you don't do everything. People plug in, people integrate. So how do you see the landscape evolving, and how are people measuring success on the Namely platform? Kind of what are their KPIs?
Yep. So I think the landscape has changed dramatically. I think if we were building this company 20 years ago, we would have to build every imaginable feature and function in one giant monolithic system. And the nice thing with open source technology and a platform approach is we don't have to do that. We don't have to be all things to all people. We can be really, really good at HR, payroll, and benefits and creating a really engaging platform that employees want to use versus trying to kind of check every single box that an enterprise buyer might want. So that's been hugely liberating. It's allowed us to be focused. We still have a lot of surface area to our product, having said that. But the nice thing is it doesn't have to get any larger. We can just be really good at those three things.
Yeah.
In terms of us, so I mentioned I started the company because I did it as a founder and as an employee, not necessarily an HR person. So I built the system, and we built the system that we wanted to use and never had access to as employees.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a big, big difference. And if you look at the usage of Namely, typically in HR systems, you might access it twice a year to download your W-2 and enroll for benefits, if that's all in one system. And what we see is our users are heavy users that when they're using Namely, the time in the app rivals or is greater than Twitter users or LinkedIn users. So people are on the site 7-10 minutes at a time, consuming lots and lots of content. And I think.
And what type of content is that for someone who hasn't used Namely in the past? What would you expect to see that consumes that 7 to 10 minutes?
Yeah. So part of the early vision for the product was that we would put an interface on the front of it that looks a lot like Facebook or Twitter. It's got a feed that's front and center. It's got a way to appreciate people and call people out for doing a wonderful job, and championing people within the org. So I think that the nice thing is it doesn't necessarily look like a payroll system. It doesn't necessarily look like a benefits system, at least when you interact with it. So that's been a really big focus for ours, to make sure that it's super engaging. And I think having a feed front and center is now starting to open up lots of other possibilities for us as well.
So it's a really, in some respects, it's a communication system as well, in addition to all the other things that you guys do.
It is. It doesn't necessarily replace other tools, but it gives HR a platform and a place to share and also just engage with employees across the company, that one place where everyone goes in the company to find out what's happening in the organization. Yeah,
I love that. I want to talk for a minute about analytics. This is an area where I think for small and medium-sized companies, as it pertains to HR, recruiting, historically has not been the place of innovation, right? Sales analytics, marketing analytics at earlier stage companies tend to be a lot more robust than your HR analytics or your recruiting analytics. So I guess the question for you guys is what's the role that Namely plays there? How much is analytics part of the story? How much of it is why people ultimately choose to go with Namely over other companies in the space?
So as I mentioned, the early vision for the company was to empower everyone in the org with the data they needed to make better decisions. And to be honest, it took us a number of years to build all the functionality that was required in order to earn the right to have that data and then do things with it that could benefit those companies and those customers. So I think the first 4 or 5 years of this journey has all been kind of building that functionality that helps HR people and helps employees get out of the day-to-day kind of a lot of the tactical work and so that they can be freed up to be more strategic. And now it's happening, and we announced yesterday that we launched Namely Analytics, and that we are now really empowering them with the data that they need to make great decisions. And it's really just the beginning of the story. We have a lot more planned on this front. I think that'll be the first 5 years was about putting this kind of all-in-one seamless solution in front of mid-sized companies. And the next 5 years is going to be all about the things that we can do with data to help them be even more strategic and frankly have a seat at the boardroom or at least at the management level.
I was going to say, I think that's what everybody in HR and recruiting wants, right? Is they want to be seen on the same plane as the person running sales and marketing and the other functions. And when you can't bring the same level of data, the same level of analytics, the same dashboards to the table, it's hard to be taken as seriously. So, we see a lot of the work that we're doing in the recruiting space, a lot of the work that you guys are doing, more broadly in HR is really helping to elevate those leaders in those parts of the company to be really taken more seriously than they've ever been.
And the key is that they need tools that are as powerful as the large enterprise has, but they have to be much less expensive. They have to be a lot quicker to deploy and a lot easier to use because most of our customers have relatively small HR teams. And in fact, some of our customers have maybe just 1 or 2 HR people.
Wow. Yep, that's fantastic. Well, I think you guys are doing a great job on that front. I want to shift gears a little bit and just talk about Namely as a company. And you guys have been scaling incredibly quickly. I mean, probably certainly one of the fastest growing companies in HR tech, maybe one of the fastest growing companies in all of tech right now. What have been the lessons learned over the last couple of years as you've gone through this kind of hyper growth period? As you reflect back kind of, just at the company level, what are some of the things that you've learned?
Yeah, I think the biggest learning for me personally, especially in the last year or so, with the encouragement of advisors and mentors and our board, has been that sometimes you can't make it on your own. You can't do it all. And I think early on, I tried to do everything myself. And it wasn't out of ego. It was just because I wanted to move fast. And I thought that I could be helpful and tried to be as helpful as I could to all parts of the org. But then you realize that you're not doing yourself, your family, or even your company a favor by trying to do everything and be all things to all people. So I think that it's been a really big personal learning that, yes, you can go fast alone, but if you want to go far, you have to build a team. And so that's really what my focus has been on probably 3/4 of my time right now is just building out that leadership team and then helping our leaders build out their teams.
Totally. And it's fun when you come to that realization as a CEO of a software vendor in the HR space that it's really all about the people, right?
Yes.
Because then you're like, wait, I get to obsess about people for my customers, but then I get to obsess about it internally. I feel very much the same way. It's almost a gift to be able to run the companies that we run.
Yeah, and I think it's also ironic, because you realize like your biggest challenge is people and talent.
You have to do it well,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
I always say if you look at Entelo's team and you think we have a crappy team, why would you ever buy our software, right?
Right.
If your HR experience isn't world class at Namely,
Yep.
what business do you have selling Namely to other people? So it really forces you to raise the bar.
The nice thing though is because I came into it not having an HR background, I was always wondering what could I possibly tell an HR person that they don't already know, because they have so much more experience than me. But what I realized is what is special is scaling at this size and the challenges and the stress and the successes. And so I can share that story.
Absolutely.
And I've found that that's resonated. I don't need to pretend to be an HR expert. I just need to tell the authentic story of the things that you go through trying to scale at a very, very fast rate.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the innovation in our space has come from people who didn't have professional experience in the space beforehand, right? Because then you don't have any preconceived notion of this is how HR has to be done or this is how recruiting has to be done. I think it's actually more likely than not that people don't have their prior background in HR before they start an innovative HR tech company. Certainly that was the case in my situation. So, well, one last question for you. I mean, you get to see a lot of things across a lot of companies, and we focus here predominantly on hiring and recruiting with our audience and the podcast. What do you see right now that is most broken in the landscape around hiring and recruiting as you work with different customers? You don't have to call out anyone, of course, by name, but what is the thing you think is most broken, and then ultimately, what solves that in the industry?
That is a really good question. I think from my personal experience, we've gone through multiple waves of hiring, and we're hiring a lot of people right now again. I think sometimes it's the basics of when you grow fast and you may not have experienced leadership in every part of the org. Sometimes that experience, the applicant experience, the number of people they have to meet, the gauntlet they have to go through, and sometimes it isn't always clearly defined. And I think that's one thing that I've noticed that I think we've gotten better at is just tightening that up a little bit and really defining how many people does this person actually need to meet?
Totally.
And have we trained the people that are doing the interviewing and the questions to ask? And even learning how to be a good interviewer is a skill and that has to require training. So I don't know if that's necessarily the best answer, but I know it's something that we've faced. It's just getting the whole org knowing how to hire.
Yeah. I know we had Laszlo Bach on the podcast earlier today, and we've taken, I think, a lot away from Google's approach to structured interviews and incorporated that at Entelo, and it's amazing how companies oftentimes wait until they're very, very large to start to put that process in place. And I think it's pretty well researched now that structured interview and just what you're trying to get out of it is so key to the hiring process. So I think that's a great answer to the question. Well, Matt, you're a busy guy, so I don't want to take any more of your time, but really appreciate you coming on today. Congrats on all the growth at Namely, and we'll be excited to see what's next.
Thank you so much, John. Thanks for having me here today.